Maybe the volume has, oh, okay. Okay. We're good, Junior? Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Make yourselves comfortable, please. If I could just ask you, as usual, to put your cell phones on vibrate, we would all appreciate it very much. Thank you. There's coffee and tea if anybody wants in the back. Okay. Today's class is dedicated in the merit of Chizkiyahu Ezriel ben Etel for a complete and speedy recovery, or refuah shlema krova and arichas yamim v'shanim tovos. Please make yourself comfortable. Next Sunday, which is Tisha B'Av, there will be a big lecture, shiur here on Tisha B'Av that I will give at 2:30 p.m. That's for men and women with a mechitza. Everybody is invited. You could tell your friends or your children or your husbands. So that's Sunday afternoon, 2:30, right here in the tent like we had on Shavuos. And it will also be live streamed on theyeshiva.net. So if you're not feeling like schlepping out of your home, you can watch it live. This tent right here. The lecture will be right here in this tent, yeah. You made it here fine? Okay. Next Sunday this is, Tisha B'Av. Tuesday, yeah. Next Tuesday as well, yeah. Okay, let's... If you want to tell somebody where you are, or you want to tell somebody to meet you in a particular place, how many references do you think you'll make to that location? You might say, meet me on Forshey near Lodi Lane. Or you might say, meet me at 11 Forshey Road. You may want to say, it's in Muncie. You may want to say it's in Rockland County. If they may not know, you may want to say it's in New York. You may even want to say it's in the United States of America. You may even want to say it's near a shul, there's a parking lot, there's a lot of cars, it's impossible to get around. You're going to have a hard time crossing the street. These are all common details that you may add in order to pinpoint the location. Just giving a street and a number is fine, but you like to give another 1 or 2 or 3 references just to give the person some extra information and extra confidence that I have arrived at my final destination. My brother told me that he stopped using GPS years ago at some point when he was going to a cemetery, and when he came there, the GPS said, "You have reached your final destination." So he thought it would be better without it. So I can understand that you want to, get it down to the exact minute detail, and therefore you may add a few references. So you have the number, the address, the street, a street nearby, or some other landmark or sign, etc. But I don't remember if I ever heard a person specify a location by giving 11 different references. That seems pretty loaded, pretty dramatic, superfluous, especially when it's not that the person wants me to go there. The person is sharing with me a story that happened and nonetheless identifies a location, not in one way, not in two ways, but in 11 different ways. And there is such an instance, and you know where that is? Anybody? Good. It's the opening verse of the book of Deuteronomy. The opening pasuk of Sefer Dvarim is exactly that. Eila hadvarim asher diber Moshe. These are the words that Moses spoke. El Kol Yisrael. Words he spoke to the entire Jewish people. Where? Here we go. Be'ever hayardin. Be'ever hayardin. Bamidbar, ba'arava, moil suf, bein paran, uvein teufel, v'lavan, v'chatzeros, dizahav, v'dizahav. Translate. Here are the words that Moshe spoke to all of Israel. Where? On the side of the Jordan, on the Transjordan, in the desert, in the Arava, parallel to Suf. Not enough. Between Paran and Teufel and Lavan and Chatzeros and Dizav. And now a second verse. Achad asar yoymei chayrev, derech har seir, ad Kadesh Barnea. 11 days from Chayrev, if you follow the route of Mount Seir, until you get to Kadesh Barnea. And then verse 3 says, it was on the 40th year, on the 11th month, on the first day of the month, when Diber Moshe el Bnei Yisrael, Moshe speaks to the Jewish people all that God has commanded him after he struck down the kings Sichon and Og on the Transjordan in the land of Moav. Now finally you give me two references. Be'evet hayardin be'eretz Moav. This is only in Pasuk Hey. Verse 5. In the Transjordan, meaning on the eastern side of the Jordan River in the Moav plains. Today's Jordan. Hayil Moshe be'eretz HaTorah hazois lemer. Moshe began expounding to his people the Torah. As we know from tradition, this is the final presentation of Moshe Rabbeinu during his lifetime. He begins this sermon or this presentation on the 11th month, the first day of the month, which in today's names we would identify as Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Shvat is the 11th month of the year. The first day of the month would be Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Moshe begins to utter his words. And here he recaps their experiences from the day they left Egypt during the last 40 years. He instructs, he inspires, he invigorates, he cautions, he mentors, he educates, he guides. And he will continue doing this for the next few weeks until his passing, which would only be 5 weeks later. So this happens Rosh Chodesh Shvat, it's the 40th year in the desert. Moshe Rabbeinu would pass away, according to our tradition, the 7th day of Adar, which means literally 1 month and 7 days after this story begins. What is so perplexing is that opening verse with so many different references to apparently the same location, and yet they still leave us in the clouds as to where exactly this is, because it is so ambiguous. I mean, these are the words he spoke in the Transjordan. Granted, give me where the name. Later he'll say Moav, but now it's a desert, it's an Arava, it's parallel to Suf, it's between Paran and Teufel, and near Lavan and Chatzeris and Dizav. And therefore Rashi, quoting already the Sifri, our sages, our Talmudic sages in Sifri, believe that this is all code language. It's cryptic. The Torah is not telling you where he spoke these words. If you just wanted to give me the location, you could have said 1 location, 2 locations, maybe 3. No need for 11 identification location. No need for 11 different terms to identify it. This Sifri in the beginning of Dvarim, quoted by Rashi, says, Sasam es hadvarim ve'eskiran beremez mipnei kvoidon shal Yisrael. The Torah is hinting here to a different message. When it says Moshe spoke to the Jews in all these places, it doesn't mean he was in all these places. It means he spoke about all these places. He made mention to all these places. He went through events that happened in these places. He rebuked, he chastised, he educated, and because of the respect of the Jewish people, the Torah does not specify what he said. It just hints to the messages. In each name, there is another message of something that happened there, something that occurred there. The problem with this is that there are names of places that we never heard of. So he can't be speaking about events that happened in those places. And that's why when it comes, for example, to a place called Paran Teufel Lavan, the Sifri, quoted by Rashi, quotes, Amar Rabbi Yochanan said, or some say Reb Shimon ben Yochai said, Chazarnu al kol hamikra v'loi matzinu makam sheshmoi Teufel v'lava. I searched in the whole Tanakh, and I couldn't find a place called Teufel and Lavan. So how can Moshe be speaking in Teufel and Lavan, or speaking about Teufel and Lavan? There's no such a place. Ella, what it means is, here he's not even mentioning things that happened in places. He's using places, names, that are being conjured to identify certain actions that the Jews did. So what Rashi is teaching us here is that these 11 names that we have is not where he spoke. You would never give me 11 references for where you are about a story, especially that happened in the past, and when it's so ambiguous. It's rather cryptic. It's code language for messages. He spoke here and 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 here. Means he spoke about here and here and here. And even places that are not here, there's no location. He spoke about things that are hinted in those names, in those supposed names and words. Why is it so hinted? Out of respect. Out of respect for the Jewish people. And Rashi goes on to decipher and decode what were those messages about each place. Midbar, Arava, Malsuf, Teufel, Lavan, Chatzeres, Dizov. What was he saying? Because the Torah hints it in a very nebulous and a very ambiguous term, but it wants us to know it because it says these names. So that's why our sages felt the need to decode it, to show us what is behind these hints. Fascinating. This is the opening verse of Dvarim. They could not make sense of it just being a literal reference to where Moshe gave this presentation. Then comes the Or HaChaim. The Or HaChaim HaKadosh is one of the great commentaries on the Chumash. The Or HaChaim, which means the light of life, Or HaChaim, the light of life, was a commentary on Chumash that was written by a man named, not surprisingly, Chaim. Rabbeinu Chaim Ibn Atar, or Ben Atar. Rabbeinu Chaim, the son of Atar. He was from Morocco. He was born in Morocco in the year Tov Nun Vav, which means 1696. And he passed away in Jerusalem in the year 1743, in his 40s, the year Tov Kuf Gimel. In Morocco, he was considered one of the greatest luminaries of his day, one of the great teachers, rabbis, speakers, sages. And at the end of his life, he decided to leave Morocco and come to the Holy Land, where he settled in Jerusalem, and he passed away on Motzei Shabbos, Tesvav Tammuz, Tov Kuf Gimel, which means the 15th of Tammuz, July 1743. He wrote many works on Halacha, on Gemara, on Chumash, on ethics, but the most famous of all of his works is his timeless classic, the Or HaChaim, which is a commentary on Chumash, which is still considered sacred in all Jewish communities and made it into the Mikrois Gdolos, the standard Chumash. In fact, the Or HaChaim is one of the few people in Jewish history whose name is usually uttered with an addition of HaKadosh, Or HaChaim HaKadosh. Very few people who received that addendum, that addition after their name. For example, you have the Shalah. Rabbeinu Yeshaya Horowitz is known as the Shalah HaKadosh, the Holy Shalah. And the Or HaChaim is literally one of the few, very few throughout Jewish history who within Jewish consciousness received that title HaKadosh. Among Hasidim, there is a story that the Baal Shem Tov, who was a contemporary of the Or HaChaim, Baal Shem Tov lived in the Ukraine, Podalia, it was known then, Volin, Padalia, the Orach Chaim lived in Morocco, and the Baal Shem Tov was having Seudah Shlishis. He was enjoying, he was in the middle of the third meal of Shabbos together with his students in his shul, in his Beis Medrash. And the Shalosh Shudas went late. It went late, it extended into the night. And the students saw that the Baal Shem Tov's features changed suddenly, and he turned to them and he said 3 words, Kava Neir HaMa'aravi, which means the western flame has been extinguished, because he was in the Ukraine, which is on the east of to the east of Jerusalem, of Eretz Yisrael, and the Orach Chaim passed away in Eretz Yisrael in Yerushalayim, and he felt it was Motzei Shabbos. The Orach Chaim passed away Motzei Shabbos, Tesvav Tammuz, and the Baal Shem Tov felt it. So he said those 3 words, Kava Neir HaMa'aravi. The menorah had 7 lamps, 7 flames, and there was what's called Neir HaMa'aravi, the western flame or the western lamp, from which the other ones used to be kindled. So the Baal Shem Tov said 3 words, Kava Neir HaMa'aravi. The western flame has been extinguished. Later they found out that was the time of the passing of the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, Rabbeinu Chaim ben Atar. There's even a tradition that somebody asked the Baal Shem Tov how he knew, and he said that there are certain, fascinating thing he said, that there are certain insights in life that are revealed to one person in a generation. To a Chad B'dara, only one person in a generation has certain insights. And this Motzei Shabbos, I experienced that insight. So I knew that the one person of the generation who used to experience it was not around anymore. And therefore it went to me. So I knew that the Orach Chaim passed away. It's such a tradition in the name of the Baal Shem Tov. What's interesting about the commentary of the Orach Chaim is, and this is a tradition and some debate it. So I know that some debate it, so those who are going to write comments on the yeshiva.net on the video that it's not true, I know about the debate, I just want to say. But there is a tradition, and many people defend this tradition very strongly, that the Orach Chaim's commentary on Chumash was essentially notes of a shir that he used to have on a daily basis with his daughters. The Orach Chaim used to teach Chumash to his daughters. As he was teaching Chumash, he shared with them his insights on Chumash, and that's what he wrote up as his commentary of Orach Chaim. Now, tradition has it that Orach Chaim didn't have children, but does that mean some say he didn't have any children, or actually that he didn't have sons, but he actually had daughters, and he taught them Chumash, and this became the commentary of the Orach Chaim. So that's why, in a woman's class, the Orach Chaim's commentary is really very appropriate, because it was actually a shir that he gave, according to many sources, to his own daughters. I say this as an introduction because I want to study with you how the Orach Chaim sees these 11 locations, which, as I said, are very strange, absolutely cryptic. So we learned what the Sifri says, we learned what Rashi says. This is code language for messages of Musar, of rebuke, but I want to share with you the Orach Chaim's interpretation. He gives an absolutely fascinating interpretation. I said 11. Okay. Ever, Yardin, Midbar, Rava, Malsuf, Paran, Toifa, Lavan, Chatzeris, Di Zahav. Okay. But if you I said 11 because I was counting the words. If you put some words together, you can have less, but the point is it's many references. And I'm going to quote you the opening of his commentary of the Orach Chaim, and we'll also post it on the source sheets on the video on the yeshiva.net. Whoever wants to read it inside later, you could open a Mikrois Gdolos and see it. The Orach Chaim says, and I quote, he says, Rabbi Seinu Zal Darshu, our sages taught, Shahichicham al Masha Asu Bamidbar V'Gaimer, that all these words are code languages for Moshe's rebuke for what the Jews did in the desert and in all of the other places. Or even if it's not places, but the words are referencing different things that happen. But ve'efsher lefarish kol hakasuv derech remez ba'ofen acher. It's possible to explain the entire verse homiletically in a different way. V'hu ki b'mikra mu'at limeid Moshe klolus yiras Hashem u'midois hahagunois hatzrichin lahilchem b'teres Hashem v'heim midois teisha. Translation: in one small verse, Mikra Mu'at, a small, tiny verse, Moshe taught the Jewish people the general principles of Yiras Hashem, of fear of God, and the appropriate midos, the appropriate dispositions and characteristics that those who walk in the way of Yiras Hashem ought to cultivate and internalize in their life, and they consist of 9 steps. So what the Eira Chaim, Rabbeinu Chaim ben Atta is teaching us, that the opening verse is in many ways the vital verse. Eila hadvarim asher diber Moshe al kol Yisrael. These are the words that Moshe spoke to all of Israel. And almost an entire Sefer Dvarim, almost till the end, till his passing, Moshe will continue these words. But the opening verse gives us all of these references where he spoke. Bamidbar, Be'ever HaYarden, Bamidbar, Ba'arava, right? Mol Suv, Ben Purim, Ben Teufel, Lovan, Chatzeris, these are not places. These are messages. He was communicating to them a 9-step program for living. There are those who follow 12-step programs. The Jewish people have a 613-step program. Here, there's an individualized 9-step program that Moshe is now giving to his people. Why now? The answer would be obvious. It's 5 weeks before his passing. Moshe will not be taking them into the promised land. His successor, Yehoshua ben Nun, Joshua, will do that. So this is really the last time that Moshe will lead and mentor his people here in a very physical way. So before Moshe gets into the details, before Moshe discusses everything he's going to discuss about their past, present, and future, Moshe, in one verse, gives them a general blueprint of how to live. As he puts it, b'mikra mu'at, in a small verse, he gives them klolus yiras Hashem umidos hahagunos. He gives them a blueprint for life. He says, I want to share with you 9 steps, 9 characteristics, 9 attitudes, 9 perspectives that you should try to cultivate in your life to be able to live a meaningful, wholesome, happy, profound, inspired, and godly life. And the Eira Chaim begins to explain. And he takes each word and he decodes the characteristic or the attitude Moshe was trying to convey. Why doesn't he say it explicitly? If it's not negative, if it's positive, if it's good things, why does he say it explicitly? Perhaps the Eira Chaim believes each one is a book. Each one is 5 volumes. Moshe here wants you to be able to carry these 9 steps, these 9 messages everywhere, always, every day, every night, throughout your life. So he compresses it in one verse. Remember these locations, right? You remember these locations and you have a program for life. So that's its value, that's its power, to summarize it and to compress it in very brief and concise terms. Each one gets 1 word or 2 words at most. Mostly 1 word. There'll be a few with 2 words. And you can carry that wherever you go. Let's go through this 9-step program that Moshe Rabbeinu shares with the Jewish people during the last weeks of his life in the opening of Dvarim, and the Eira Chaim HaKadosh reveals to us what these 9 messages are. Now, just as an intro, he says them very, very brief. Sometimes it needs a little explanation, elaboration, elucidation. So the nucleus of this is the Eira Chaim, but I'm going to elaborate a little bit according to the way that I understood it. But I'm just telling you there is the original language of the Eira Chaim, which is very brief and concise and sometimes a little cryptic. Not as cryptic as the verse itself, but still can be very brief and concise. So I will be elaborating a little bit the way I understand it, but I do want to make reference of it that I am not quoting now the Eira Chaim verbatim. Everybody could look inside, and as I said, we will post it as a source sheet to the video on the yeshiva.net, which you can access later or send to others. The Eira Chaim says the first thing, Eila hadvarim asher diber Moshe al kol Yisrael. These are the words that he speaks to everybody, because this is relevant to everybody. The first words are Be'ever HaYarden. This is not a location. Of course, it's also a location, but it's too big for a location. Transjordan is like saying, United States of America, on the east side of the Jordan. Okay. He says, no. Step one in life is be'aver. The first step in life is he's teaching them about aver. In the words of the Arachayim, who's aver? Sheyiyah loikeach midasai shel Avraham diksiv Avram ha'ivri v'hu masher ramaz ba'omrei be'aver. When you hear the word aver, we know, as the famous pasuk says in Yehoshua, we say it in the Haggadah, be'aver hanahar yashvu aveisechem. Aver means the other side. Avram is called in Chumash. How is he called? Avraham ha'ivri. Avram ha'ivri. In fact, our original name were Ivrim. In English, Hebrew. The word Hebrew comes from where? Aver, Ivri, right? Ivri anoichi, I am a Hebrew. Why are we called Ivrim? Because Avram came from the other side of the river. From the other side of the Jordan, from the other side of the Euphrates or Tigris. Avram came from present-day Iraq, and he crossed the river and he came over into the land of Canaan. So he had to cross the rivers in Iraq, the Euphrates, the Tigris, if he crossed those rivers, but then he had to cross the Jordan River. Aver is the other side, where Avram came from. We're called Ivrim. The Medrash says, why is he given that name? Just because he came from that side. Aver means side. So that's why you call him Avram Ivri, Avram from the other side. And of course, it intimates the idea, the Medrash says, Hu me Aver echad v'chol ha'olam kulam Aver sheni. He had the courage to be on one side, even when the whole other world was on the other side. But the Arachayim is telling us that Moshe Rabbeinu is telling the Jewish people, the first thing is, you have to adopt. You want to internalize the attribute of Avram Avinu, Midas Shel Avram. What was the great attribute of Avram? Everybody knows. Avram is identified as Avram Oyavi, Avram, my best friend, Avram who loves me. Avram is always identified in many, Midrashim and in Zohar and many places as the embodiment of Midas HaChesed, of love, of affection. So Moshe Rabbeinu gives the first step program is live a life of love. Love. Love others, love yourself, love life. Avram Avinu walked with love. His attitude to life was love. He saw love where he went, wherever he went. And he cultivated love and he shared love. That's be'aver. The first quality, the quality of Avram, who is aver. It's a choice everyone has to make in life. Maybe for some people it comes easier than others. Maybe for some people it comes more natural than others. A lot, of course, depends on how we were educated, how we were brought up, our nature, our nurture, what type of environment we were brought up, what type of home we were brought up, what type of messages we received as children. Those are all the circumstances that set up the props for our life. But as one grows and becomes mature and has to take responsibility for their life, Moshe Rabbeinu says, when you have to choose a path of love, of closeness, of affection, not of divisiveness or of coldness or of numbness or of detachment and recoiling. Don't be stingy with love, not to yourself and not to others. In parentheses, I'll share something very moving. I thought it was very moving. There's a Jew in Eretz Yisrael. His name is Rav Moshe Tzur. Rav Moshe Tzur grew up as a secular Israeli Jew. He was in the Israeli Air Force. Very, very successful. A commander. He ultimately became a Bal Tshuva, came close to Yiddishkeit. And I heard from him that in the 1970s, he came to Brooklyn and he visited the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And during their encounter, the Lubavitcher Rebbe asked him if he's using his talents and resources to influence the community and to reach out to other people. And he intimated that he wasn't really into that. He was focused more on himself and his own growth and his own perfection and working within himself, what we call steiging for yourself. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe was encouraging him to use, he's a man of charisma and talent and wisdom and a lot of energy, to use it to influence people, to bring people closer, to reach out. So at some point in the conversation, Reb Moshe said, the Rebbe asked him, I said, I want to ask you a question. Which side is the heart on? He said, of course, the left. He said, but in Yiddishkeit, which side is more important, the right or the left? So he said, we all know the right side is more important. Chazal say that the right is always considered the more prominent side. So he said, so why would Hashem make that the source of life, which comes from the heart, which pumps the blood, the pasuk says, Hadam hu hanefesh, the blood is the seat of the soul, so to speak, and that's where the vitality, the blood goes to the rest of the body. Why did the Rebbeinu Shalom put it on the left side, not on the right side, the right ventricle of the heart? So he was quiet. So the Rebbe said, I think the answer is that actually our heart is not on the left side. It's really on the right side. Because the function of a heart is to be able to feel the heart of the person standing in front of you. And for that person, the heart is on the right. The function of your heart is to be able to experience the heartbeat of the other person, to be able to empathize with the person standing right in front of you. And for that person, your heart is actually on the right. He says, remember why you were given a heart, to be able to feel other people, to be able to experience other people, to be able to help other people. That's why you were given a heart on the left side, which is really on the right side when you understand its function. And he said it changed his entire paradigm. And he became deeply involved in the work of Ahavos Yisrael, of uniting, of loving. So the first step of the program is Be'ever. Hayarden. What's Hayarden? Yarden literally means the Jordan. The Orach Chaim references us to a statement in the Talmud. Tractate Brachas, Daf Zayin, Brachas, page 7. The Gemara says, Toiva mardus achas, beliboy shel adam, mimeya malkiyos. Which means, I don't know how to translate this. Mardus achas in your heart is superior to 100 lashes. Which means, one idea that you tell yourself in your heart is much more effective than somebody disciplining you with 100 whips. You would think, if I can whip somebody into shape 100 times, that will be the most effective method. So the Gemara says, no, toiva mardus achas. If there's one statement of sincerity, beliboy, in your heart, if you can, mardus is also from the word, I guess, moired, merida, rebellious, which means if you can challenge yourself, if you can reach a place of awareness within yourself, even if it's for 1 second and for 1 moment, it's more effective than 100 whips. And we understand why. Externally, if I could whip myself or somebody else into shape 100 times, it's a grand slam dunk. It's a success story. But because it's coerced and it comes from an external place, it's not really effective. It's not internalized. And the moment the pain and the fear of the lashes will subside, that moment the message disappears. But mardus achas, if there's one awareness, one moment of awareness, one internal moment of awakening in which I rebel against my previous paradigms or my previous behaviors, mardus achas is worth more than all the mussar in the world that other people will give you. Even the mussar that you will give yourself when it's coming from an external place. Says the Orach Chaim, that's hayarden. Hayarden he associates with the word yered, the shorish is yud reish dalet, which he associates with the word mardus, that Moshe Rabbeinu is giving them the second principle in life. And the second principle in life is, whether it's referring to you or referring to other people, and it's fascinating that this is his second program, whether it's referring to yourself or referring to others, never confuse power with influence. Never blur the differences between coercion, which may look good in short term, between inner awareness that lasts a lifetime. It's true with your children. It's true with your students. It's true with your disciples. It's true with employees. It's also true with yourself. I can get things to look good. I take out the whip, whether it's the physical whip or it's the verbal whip. Irrelevant. I whip you into shape 100 times. That's a lot, because 10 times didn't work. There's a reason 10 times didn't work. 100 times. It may be screaming, it may be hollering, it may be insulting, it may be threatening, it may be frightening, it may be talking to you about how you're going to get the worst shidduch in the world. But the bottom line is, it's the whip that's being used. Moshe says, one moment of truth, one moment of awareness, one moment of authentic communication that comes from the inside, that comes from the pnimius, that comes from the leiv, will be infinitely more effective because it's coming from within. And there's no substitute for that. It will last a lifetime. It's true also you vis-a-vis yourself, and it's true you vis-a-vis others. Bamidbar, step 3, in the desert. And the Rechaim says what Moshe Rabbeinu was talking about the desert is Midas ha'anava. Learn to be humble, simple, plain. What's the uniqueness of a desert? It doesn't decorate itself with all types of extra fanfare and drama to make it appealing. A desert is raw, barren, naked, authentic, humble. The Torah was given in a desert, Chazal say, because of its rawness. It's a place of truth. There's no energy that covers up over there. There's nothing happening there. Not urban life, not cosmopolitan life, not civilization, and not even a beautiful landscape. You know, there are different types of civilized communities. There are communities that are very, very filled with life and noise and work and businesses and the hustle and bustle, the intensity. Yeshivas krachim kasha, what Chazal say, you know, living in the big urban cities, cosmopolitan centers of business and finances. That's one style of life, where you have the skyscrapers and the huge infrastructure. But then you have what's called suburbia, why a lot of people initially came here. There's no lights at night, God forbid. There could be 1,000 cars, but there's no lights because we need the country touch and feel. Now that's good if there's no cars. If everybody's in the country, right, making fires and playing with the deer, that works. Okay, so we have here a little bit of a paradox that we have to deal with, maybe cognitive dissonance. But there's another place, there's beautiful landscapes, gardens and flowers and trees and vegetation. That's still not a desert. It's much more relaxing and calm than places where there are man-made structures that are really man-made and so many people, but it still has its own art. Midbar is raw as it gets. It's barren. What does that represent in a person's life? What he calls simplicity, authenticity, vulnerability. Chazal say the Torah was given there because it's given to a person who's completely open, completely authentic. It's also a place of hefker. It's an ownerless place. People don't claim ownership over it because there's nothing to own. You can't build, you can't grow, you can't produce. Torah is hefker. It's for everybody. It's ownerless. Humility means a person has that feeling of openness, of authenticity, anova. It's not decorated. It's not no shtick, no cover-ups. This is what Moshe told the Jews as a third step program. Be a real person. Be a human person. Be an authentic person. In that way, reflect a desert, raw. Ba'arava. What's Ba'arava? Ba'arava, the Rechaim says, comes from the word arev, arevus, which means sweet. V'harevna, Hashem Elokeinu is divrei serascha. And he says what happens is, sometimes, when people are humble, they also become disgusting to themselves. B'derech hapchisus hanimas. A person starts looking down at themselves. A humble humility is sometimes confused with self-denigration. Humility is sometimes confused with the notion that I'm a shmata, I'm valueless, I'm a nobody, I am superfluous, I'm just a burden to everybody and to me, I'm full of guilt. It's a humility that feeds into toxicity. It doesn't embolden it doesn't embolden the spirit in a positive way. It doesn't promote growth and openness. Rather, it's humility that is crushing. Sometimes people confuse healthy humility with self-destruction. Moshe Rabbeinu says no. Ba'arava. You want to be able to feel a certain sweetness in a person's life. A sweetness, on arava, on arevus. The way the Erechaim puts it is, Shetia ha'anava areva. Your humility should be sweet. Kal derech oimrei umatza chen v'seichel toiv be'enei elikim v'adam. Umatza chen v'seichel toiv means a desert, yes. But it's a humility that promotes real growth, real connection. Not a humility that puts down and saps out your vitality and makes you feel just guilty and worthless. If your humility is not coming with a feeling that's good, that's sweet, that's ennobling, arevus means there's a sweetness there, there's a geschmack there, there's a delight there. If it comes with this heavy feeling, it's not Jewish humility. It's a completely different experience. Whenever you think humility means, I'm a nobody, and this is what we can also, if I feel that about myself, I'm going to share that with other people as well. I'm going to share that with children, with students. If I'm a nobody, then you're a nobody. Or sometimes it's the other way. Everybody else is a nobody, but I'm a somebody. But all of these types of humilities are those that sap out the life of a person. The Midbar, the desert, was the greatest place of growth for the Jewish people, not the place of emotional paralysis, of emotional numbness. He adds also something else. Arava comes from the word arev, which is a guarantor. Kol Yisrael, arevim zebazeh. And here he says a fascinating insight. Moshe was telling the Jewish people, sometimes humble people in the name of humility, they don't stand up to corruption. If your humility is causing you to lose your identity and understanding what's right and what's wrong, then it's very destructive humility. If your humility causes you to live a life in which you must always maintain a low profile, surrender, submit, and duck, and allow for abuse to happen to you or around you without saying a word and saying, I'm a humble person, he says, this type of anava is a corrupt humility. It has to be ba'midbar, but there's the ba'arava. What's the ba'arava? Chiyuv ha'arvos. Humility doesn't take you away from responsibility. It makes you a greater leader, not a smaller leader. My humility turns me into a shmata, where I can't speak up, where I can't stand up for anything. He says you have to revisit it and re-examine it. And it's interesting because the Baal Shem Tov once said that the Gemara says, Kol Yisrael arevim zebazeh. All Jews are guarantors for each other. Arevim is a guarantor, which means we are responsible for each other. Why? He said, because arevim has another two interpretations. Arevim also comes from the word mu'urav, ta'aruvis. What does that mean? Mixed. Right? When things are mixed, it's called mu'urav. Arevim also has the meaning of sweet. So Arev is a guarantor, Arev is mixed, mu'urav, and Arev is sweet. Right? We quote the pasuk, Hareini es marayich, hashmeini es koilech, ki koilech, Arev, or marich nava. The koil is Arev, it's sweet. V'serav, or harev, all sweetness. Said the Baal Shem Tov, Kol Yisrael arevim zebazeh. Jews are guarantors for each other because arevim zebazeh, because they're mixed up with each other. And therefore, arevim zebazeh, they're sweet for each other. They're responsible for each other because they're integrated, because they're one. And therefore, one Jew for another Jew is sweet. If I don't feel the sweetness, if I don't feel the ziskeit, the sweetness of another Jew, then I'm not in touch with the arevim zebazeh. Arevim zebazeh means there's a unity, there's an integration. Imagine you look at a part of your body and you hate a part of your body. There's something off. It's one organism. There's integration, there's synthesis. So that's the arava. The arava is, number one, there's a sweetness. Number two, there is a connection. There is interconnectedness. And therefore, number 3, there is a responsibility. And when we speak about humility, we have to especially speak about arava. It should be sweet. It should be productive. In Hebrew, there's 2 different words, anova and shiflus, very different. Shiflus means you're a humble person in the sense that you don't know your virtues. Anova means you know your virtues, but you're still humble. And it's a very different experience. When it says Moshe was the humblest person in the world, doesn't mean he didn't know his virtues. He wasn't in denial. He knew that Hashem chose him as the person to give Torah and to lead the Jewish people out of Egypt. He knew what he did. Did he really think that other people were greater than him? He didn't know who he was. He knew exactly who he was. But he understood that what he had was a gift. It was a gift from above. He was humble with it. So the humility didn't take him away from responsibility. It didn't take him away from a self-appreciation, a confidence of understanding that you're a conduit for this particular mission. But it put it in context, to put it in perspective. And therefore it's humility that's always sweet. You never ever want to teach a child that humility means don't stand up for yourself, or humility means don't stand up to bullies, or humility means allow for corruption and evil to go around you and I'm just a nice guy and I duck and I don't see. Because if I don't see, I become an accomplice. If I say that I don't see, I become an accomplice. And as they say, what it takes for evil to flourish is not bad people, it's good people who do nothing and say nothing and always have the excuse, I am a humble person. Then Moshe Rabbeinu comes to the next program. Ba'aver was 1, Yarden was 2, Bamidbar was 3, Ba'arava was 4, Moil Suf. What does Moil Suf mean? Literally, Moil Suf means facing the end. Facing the end. And this is the next program that Moshe Rabbeinu gives the Jewish people. After Aver, Yarden, Bamidbar, Arava, number 5 is, he says, Moil Suf. What's Moil Suf? To face the end. What does it mean to face the end? The Orach Chaim puts it, Sheyiyeh lemul einov, soif adam v'tachlisoi, which contains a lot of depth inside. On one basic level, it means don't get caught up too much in egotistical things. Have perspective. Mol Suf means I have to be able to see long term, not only short term. On one level, it means face your own end. Can I face my mortality? It's not an easy thing for people because our natural instinct is that we're invincible. And I guess it's supposed to be that way. Even though logically we may know otherwise, you don't feel that you came from somewhere and you don't feel you're going anywhere. We all feel that we're eternal essentially. And there's a deep, powerful reason for that, but it's not for today's shiur. But there's also something else in life. And that is, can you make peace with your mortality? Can you really make peace with it? Moshe Rabbeinu says, Moil Suf. You should stand against the Suf. You should face the end. David HaMelech says in Tehillim Kapitel Lametes, Hoidi'eni Hashem Kitzi, Umidas Yomai Mahi, Eda Mechodel Oni. God, allow me to know my end and the measurement of my days. Make me aware that it won't last forever. Hoidieni Hashem Kitzi. Why? David HaMelech also says in Tehillim, we say it Shabbos morning, Limnois Yameinu Kain Hoida V'Navi Levav Chachma. Teach me how to count my days so I can produce a heart of wisdom. Limnois Yameinu Kain Hoida. When I was a child, I heard a story from an old Yid. And he told me that there was a very well-known Hasidic master. He was known as the Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek was the 3rd Chabad Rebbe, grandson of the Baal HaTanya. It was Sukkot, and Sukkot finished, and life moved on, and they didn't take down the Sukkah yet that was in the porch of the Tzemach Tzedek's house. And the sukkah was open to his private study. This private study went out to the sukkah. So there was a chassid who decided he'll climb up and hear what the Tzemach Tzedek is doing. He wanted to know how he learns or how he davens. So he went up, he climbed up on the schach, and from there he put his ear to the schach. He can hear what's happening inside the room. And he hears the Tzemach Tzedek saying Tehillim. And he's saying Tehillim Kapitel Lamed Tes. And this chassid, you have to be impressed, he had a chush. He heard it and he remembered it. Until today in Chabad, they have the niggin. He heard the Tzemach Tzedek singing a niggin while he was saying Tehillim, and he remembered it, and it's here till today. In their books of songs, they have the notes of the niggin. On these words, it goes something like this. You listen to the niggin, you'll understand. It wasn't a song that he composed. While he was saying the Tehillim, he did it naturally with this niggin. It came natural, like the niggin was the container for the words. Hoidieni Adershem Kitzi Umidas Yomai Mahi Eido Mechodei Lo Ani. Notify me, Hashem, my end, and the measurement of my days, what they are. Allow me to be aware that it comes to an end. The Rebbetzin, Chaya Mushka, his wife, was cleaning up the sukkah. And she looks up, she sees there's no sun, there's shade, she looks up. And she sees a guy over the schach. So she had a towel. And he said, weg von dannen, away. Was bist du da? Why are you here? And then she adds a few words that are so telling. She said, was? Hast keinmal nicht gehört, wie a Yid sagt Tillim? You never heard a Jew saying Tillim? Why are you here? You never heard a Jew saying Tillim? She basically took it for granted. This is how a Jew says Tillim. How can a Jew say Tillim otherwise? So what do you have to hear? You never heard a Jew say Tillim? I don't know which part of the story is better. So he ran. She chased him away. Last thing he needed is for her to tell her husband. He ran away, but he remembered the niggin. He remembered the Heideini Hashem Kitzi. It's not about pessimism. Be a pessimist. We're not talking about that. Just like when we spoke about humility, we're not talking about humility that is self-destructive. I'm a nobody, I'm worthless, I'm the worst thing that ever happened to the world. God hates me, I hate myself. That's not humility. That's called Yetzer Hara conversation. Humility always promotes growth. It always promotes interest. It always promotes connection with yourself and others. Mol Suf is not about pessimism. A person who's always living in perpetual fear that the next moment is going to be the worst moment. Mol Suf means facing the reality of life. Facing the real reality of life, because it allows you to live your life in a different way. It allows you to maximize a moment. It allows you to maximize a day. Mol Suf means to face your mortality so that you can actually align your life with eternity. On a deeper level, Mol Suf means, we say in the morning, every morning, Neshama shenasata bi tahirihi, ata v'rasa, ata yitzarta, ata nefachta, v'ata meshamra b'kirbi, v'ata osid litla mimeni. You're going to take it away. Why is that relevant now? You give me a house. Yeah? Thank you. I know you're going to take it away. Celebrate. Why are you saying that in the morning? Ata osid litla mimeni, ulachzira bi. Lasid love. Al kain kol zman shaneshama v'kirbi moidani lefanecha. There's a very deep statement here. The Baal HaTanya explains it in Tanya Perek Memalef. What we're saying is something much deeper. Judaism doesn't believe that death is a reality that affects the entire person, because a soul is a chelik eloka mimal, and God doesn't die. Soul is a fragment of God. So really the term death, you have to be very sensitive with the term. I prefer much more the term unplugged. Unplugged is a much better term, right? Sometimes I'm invited to give lectures to different types of crowds. And one of the topics people like to hear about is the afterlife. What happens in the afterlife? So the question is always, Rabbi Jacobson, is there life after death? There's no life after death. But it depends how you define death. Life doesn't die. Death can die. Life doesn't die. Life lives. So here's the question. Electricity. Electricity is infusing your refrigerator with an electrical power that's keeping the yogurt and the cheese and the meat cold, especially in this weather. And the electricity is infusing your phone that it should remain alive so you can receive all of the vital text messages. Ma, when you're coming home, you said we're going bowling. It's summer. I have nothing to do. I'm bored. I told you to go to camp. And the vacuum cleaner is being infused by electricity so the house can be cleaned. And the freezer is being infused, and the computer is being infused so that you could type whatever you have to type or read whatever you have to read on the computer. But something happens, and that is somebody unplugged the refrigerator. So now I ask you, did electricity die? Where did it go to? Electricity doesn't die. Electricity doesn't die. In fact, the force of electricity was here thousands of years before people knew that there was such a concept called electricity. At some point in history, God allowed us to discover the gifts of electricity and experience its impact. What is life? Life on this world is electricity, divine electricity being manifested through my body, just like the electricity is manifested through the refrigerator, or through the vacuum cleaner, or through the computer, or through the phone, or through the alarm clock, whatever is functioning over the electricity, or the video camera, or any other machine. In other words, whether it's the washing machine or the or the oven or the microwave, whatever machine is, it's a particular manifestation of electricity. When it's unplugged, the electricity doesn't die. It reverts back to the place of electricity. So what is death? Unplugged. Unplugged means that the divine electricity is not being manifested through this keli. But in terms of the soul, the life continues exactly the way it was, in a way even deeper, because it's not being filtered through this particular vessel, through this particular container. Says the Baal HaTanya, that's what a person has to realize when you're alive. When you're alive, it's electricity that's alive. Your body is a conduit for electricity. You're not detached from the divine. It's not like you need a relationship with Hashem. You are Hashem. You are divine. Imagine a refrigerator one day turns to you and says, I had enough with this dictatorship, this electricity. I am on my own. I'm a teenager. I've been in your house for 17 years. I'm a teenager. I need autonomy. I need independence. I couldn't care less about electricity. I don't need electricity. I am I. So you tell the refrigerator, okay, I understand. You're looking for yourself. What do you want me to do? Pull out that plug. I want to be on my own. And you know what happens to the refrigerator? Yisgadal. V'yiskadash. Yeah, of course. What happens to my computer? I'll pull out the plug because my computer has an ego. Computers don't have it. You are the electricity. Without electricity, there's nothing here. It's not a fight. Electricity is not your dictator. You are the electricity. You're the manifesting the power of electricity through your vehicle. That's what life is. You're manifesting the divine through your vehicle. You're never separate. You're one. The question is how aware of you are of it. A refrigerator never becomes stupid. That's why they never unplug themselves unless we do. Because refrigerators are smart. We're not always so smart, so we sometimes think, well, unplug. But you are that electricity. So neshama shenasata bi tahiri. Ata v'rasa. The soul you have given me is pure. In Aramaic, tahira means light. Tahiru means light. Soul you have given me is your light. It's your electricity. Ata barasa, you created it. Ata yitzarta, you formed it. Ata nafachta, you blew it into me. Did you ever wonder about the order? Before it being pure, it has to be created. Shouldn't he say, Neshama shenasata bi ata barasa Yitzarta Nefacht, and then Tahira. The answer is the neshama is Tahira before it was created. The neshama is a chelik elakami mal. Later it goes into the stage of baras. In other words, the neshama is beyond baras, it's beyond creation, it's creator. Then the neshama goes through a transformation where it becomes an identity. The electricity could now go into a body. Barasa, Yitzarta, Nefachta, it's a whole evolution. Va'ata meshamra bikirbi. But va'ata asid litlo mimeni. The soul is divine. The soul is not divine. You are divine. That is who you are. Your godliness. You are holiness. Va'ata asid lachzirabi. And then it's going to be plugged in, plugged out, plugged in. But the soul is divine. There's no such a thing as death in a person. Al kain moidani lefanecha Hashem Elokai v'Elokei Avosai. If that's the case, so me'ata. So already now I'm going to live with that oneness. I'm not going to deceive myself. I'm not going to detach my refrigerator from my electricity. So he's saying, and therefore, calls manshan neshama v'kirbi. It's not only I'm going to be thankful. Also from the term of Haidah, I'm going to be one, I'm going to be aligned. Moil Suf means to face not just the end, but also the beginning. It means to face the end as a beginning. It's to understand who you are, who you really are. Never ever detach your body from your soul. Never ever detach yourself from your electricity. Never ever divorce yourself from your inner light, from your inner divine core. That is who you are. That's what Suf represents, because that's exactly what happens. What happens by death is, nobody dies, just unplugged. Where do you go? You go where you always were, what you always were. Electricity doesn't die. That's what you were. Be that now. Moshe continues with his program. Ba'ever, Hayarden, Ba'midbar, Ba'arava, Mal Suf. Number 6. Bein Paron uvein Teufel. Says the Rechaim here, he's already doing bains. You got to be between Paron and you got to be between Teufel. And he gives a fabulous insight. Paron comes from the word Pe'er. You know what Pe'er means? Beauty, glory. Pe'er Hadar means the beauty of the generation. Pe'er comes from the word Tif'eres, is associated with Pe'er. Harmony, splendor, beauty. When something is multicolorful, we call it Tif'eres. Pe'er is beauty. What's Teufel? Anybody knows what Teufel is? Huh? Teufel with a test, but Teufel with a tough. Huh? Not mamish darkness. Teufel is a pasuk in Yeshaya. In, I forgot where. But there's a pasuk in Tanakh. Haye'achel, Mishlei probably. Haye'achel Teufel mibli Iyov, Job. Haye'achel Teufel mibli melach. Can you eat Teufel without salt? So the Mefarshim say Teufel is anything that is raw and still has to be fixed up. For example, in those days, they would not eat anything without salt, right? That bread was dipped in salt. Without salt, it often felt tasteless. So Teufel mibli melech is something that's raw, that still needs repair. Says Moshe Rabbeinu to the Jewish people, live a life bein Paron uvein Teufel. In between glory on one side and the awareness of everything that still requires repair, so that you never become stagnated and paralyzed. You see, there are different extremes in life. There's an extreme called Paran and an extreme called Teufel. One extreme is Teufel is, I'm never satisfied. I'm never content. We just had a bar mitzvah. You find what was wrong in the bar mitzvah. I told the caterer, vanilla. He tells me there's no vanilla in New York today. There was a hurricane in China, and therefore there was no vanilla ice cream in New York. And for a month, you're miserable. There was supposed to be napkins on the left side by the Sheva Brachas. There's always what to complain about. Nothing is perfect. You know the expression of Chazal, it says in Parshas Bereishis, Vayar Elokim es kol asher asa v'hinei toiv ma'oid. Says the Medrash, toiv is the angel of life. Ma'oid, you remember? the angel of death. Toiv, angel of life. Ma'oid, what does this mean? One lovely interpretation is, when you want things to be good, that's the angel of life. When you want things to be perfect, that's the angel of death. You will destroy every ambition, because perfection is the enemy of progress. If you need perfection, you will never ever be able to do anything, because nothing will be perfect. Ma'oid is a malach hamavas. You want it to be good, good. You want it to be perfect, excellent, impeccable, flawless. You're killing it. And you know who else you kill? You kill yourself. You're always killing yourself. So that's one thing. But you say, no, it means I'm going to grow. You're not going to grow anything. You're going to become a malach hamavas. You're going to kill yourself and everybody around you. There's another opposite extreme. Paran, everything is always beautiful, beautiful, dandy, beautiful. You know that extreme? Which one do you prefer? Everything is always beautiful, perfect. You're like a little detached. Everything is always sweet and wonderful, like a little numb to life. It seems very holy, but it's really a little detached. Bein paran uvein teufel. Live in the space between paran and teufel. Live in the space where you can recognize the beauty in yourself and in others, but in the space where you can also recognize the work, the necessary labor to grow and perfect and enhance. Misha yesh loimona roitzim asayim. In a good way. You have it in a negative way, you have it in a very good way. Ezo asher asameach bechelkoi is good in Gashmis, but not in Ruchnias. I want to learn from others. I want to grow. The Rebbe Chaim brings the famous expression from the Chayvus Halavavos. Chayvus Halavavos, Shara Prishus, chapter 4. Haparush tzahalosai b'fanav v'da'agosai b'liboy. The dedicated person, the one who's parush, dedicated to God, on his face you will see joy. There may be worry, but he doesn't have to share that and show that to everybody. Not everybody has to know about all of my anxiety. The proper person has to know it. Don't infect your children and everybody with your own anxiety and your own stress. If somebody can help me, if somebody is a close friend of mine, if somebody is a spouse, in a way that they can help somebody, you have a spouse, you have a close friend, you have a mentor. B'Sol Salanter, they say, saw once a Jew in shul, and he said, he saw that he looked very, very despondent, and he gave this sour feeling. So he said, Azai. He saw him in the street or outside of shul. He said, what happens inside of you is a reshus hayachid, it's a private domain. Outside here is a public domain. On Shabbos, don't carry from the private domain into the public domain. Not everything from the reshus hayachid has to go into the reshus harabim. What does this mean? This means that sometimes when people are feeling frustrated or something, everything becomes bad. Everything becomes negative. You're always an ambassador. You want to bring love, you want to bring light, you want to bring hope to a situation. So he says, Bein paran, always have the paran. Heipach etzvay, not depression, not panim rois. Don't have a bad face, a sour face. But inside, you have to be able to challenge yourself, to stimulate yourself, to always know that I don't want to become smug and stagnated and content. And it's a very subtle tension. Bein paran uvein teufel. It's very easy to go to extremes. One extreme is I just become detached and everything is perfect and good, and I'm basically spiritually numb. And another extreme is I'm so hard on myself and everything. Nothing is ever good. Can you celebrate life? Can you appreciate what is? And then welcome the invitation for more growth. That's the attitude. Bein paran uvein teufel. Which brings us to the next program. And the next program is number 7. Lavan. What does Lavan mean? Lavan means white. And the Rechaim says, Moshe turned to the people and he said, program number 7 for life is Sheyeh lo leiv tahor v'naki. You want to be a clean person. You want to have a clean, pure, white heart. Leiv tahor brali elikim. What does this mean? It means don't spend your life walking around the planet with feelings of hate, jealousy, competitiveness, frustration, animosity, negativity, toxicity. Love on. Cleanse that heart. Now you'll say, but what if I have it? What if my heart does have it? I look at this person and I'm jealous. I look at this person and I'm angry. I look at this person and I'm furious. I look at this person and I'm filled with hate. I can't deny it. If that's what my heart is feeling, my heart is feeling that. But Moshe Rabbeinu is teaching us something very, very powerful here. And that is, and I quote Ohr HaChaim now, Yarchik mimenu sinas habriyas, kina, tacharus, umastema. Stay away from hating people, anybody. Stay away from jealousy. Stay away from negative competitiveness, trying to outshine other people. And stay away from inner animosity towards other people. Lovon sheyisyaches latara kinuz yishalovon. Should be able to look in the mirror psychologically and see a clean, white, bright person, a pure person. But what if I have these in my heart? I should say I don't. That can even be worse. Just to deny the reality, what is going to help me? But the big question is how you identify yourself vis-a-vis yourself. What often happens is, and this is the key. The Ohr HaChaim wasn't the Ohr HaChaim. Just to explain to you, I mentioned the Ohr HaChaim. It's kedait, it's important, it's worthwhile to say this. The Ohr HaChaim writes in Parshas Vayigash. You remember Yosef's words when he revealed himself to his brothers the first time after 22 years. He said these words, Ani Yosef, ha'oid avichai. I'm Yosef, is my father alive. They got scared, they couldn't answer. He said, come closer. And then he said, Ani Yosef achichem asher mechartem oisim Mitzrayim. I am Yosef, your brother, the one you sold to Egypt. The Recham says, what is this redundancy? He told them already, Ani Yosef. Who do they think he meant? Yosef Finkelstein? Ani Yosef, Yosef from where? Zimbabwe? Yosef from Anchorage? They thought it was Ani Yosef. He calls them back and he says, Ani Yosef, I'm Yosef, not enough. Your brother. Oh, who do they think? It's their ninth cousin once removed? They knew 1,000 Yosefs in Egypt? And they're not enough. Asher mechartem oisim Mitzrayim. The guy you sold to Egypt. Really? They don't know? You heard them cry about it. You heard them regret what they did in Egypt. Ashemim anachnu. They said, we're guilty because of what we did to our brother. Months before this. Why are you doing this? And he wasn't trying to pour salt on their wounds and reminding them of their guilt, because on the contrary, he was trying to ease their pain. Listen to the Ohr HaChaim. You know what the Ohr HaChaim says? He said, Ani Yosef. They were terrified. I would also be terrified. He's the prime minister of Egypt, one of the most powerful people. What happens now? He says, come closer. Ani Yosef achichem asher mechartem oisim Mitzrayim. I am Yosef, your brother, the one who you sold to Egypt, says the Ohr HaChaim what he said. I am Yosef, your brother, and I remained your brother even when you sold me to Egypt. As you were selling me to the Egyptians, I remained your brother. Ani Yosef achichem asher, the one whom you sold, he remained your brother. One of the big Hasidic rabbis, I think it was the Naftali Rupshitzer or somebody, the Tzanzir Rav, said over there, Ohr HaChaim, and he says, only a person who lives this way could have seen this taich in the pasuk. He says, the Ohr HaChaim said this pshat because sometimes to see an insight, you have to be that insight. You understand what I'm saying? People pick up on who they are. I can't interpret a verse based on other people's information. You interpret a verse based on who you are. What your antennas pick up the energy. The Ohr HaChaim's antennas picked up that energy. To give you an illustration of this, with a contemporary of his a few decades later, Rabbi Yitzchak of Berditchev. Rabbi Yitzchak of Berditchev was a Gaon Olam. He was the Av Bezdin of Berditchev. Before that, he was the rabbi of two other big cities, Pinsk and another big city. Unfortunately, his first two positions, he was thrown out in the middle of the night with his family because those were the years when the opposition to Hasidim and Hasidus was raging. So there was a man in Pinsk, he was like the leader, his name was Rabbi Vigdor. He threw out the Barditchev in the middle of the night. Finally, Rabbi Yitzchak of Barditchev, the Kedushas Levi, came to Barditchev. Barditchev was a very big community then in the Ukraine. And he became the Av Bezin, he became, the, so to speak, the chief rabbi of Barditchev, and he was loved by Barditchev. So much that when he passed away, they never appointed another Rav in Barditchev. Till today, he's called the Barditchev Rav. The rabbi of Barditchev, he's buried in Barditchev in the Ukraine. Rabbi Yitzchak of Barditchev. There was a person, a Jew in the community who was very powerful and very influential and very wealthy. And he despised Rabbi Yitzchak of Barditchev. He was indoctrinated with this negative, toxic animosity. And when somebody has it, it's very hard to cleanse yourself from it. Because, Jews have a weakness in this area. We hear information, we have an idealism, and the idealism gets confused with toxicity and stupidity and ignorance and arrogance. And it becomes very hard to deal with. We suffer as a people. We really have to challenge this in ourselves. I don't mean present company. I mean our Yetzer Haras. So this man hated the Barditchever. But you couldn't oppose the Yitzchak of Barditchev. First of all, he was a Gaon, he was a genius. He was tremendous Yiras Shamayim. He was a tzaddik, he was a Kaddish Elyon, he was a saintly man. You saw it. It was like you couldn't oppose him. He was pure holiness, pure goodness. But this fellow just wanted to get rid of him. So listen what's called, I don't know what it's called, mischievous, sly, cruel, shrewd. Erev Yom Kippur, he comes to the Heilige Barditchever in his house, and he says, I want to ask Mechila. I want to ask forgiveness for all that which I have done to persecute you and make your life miserable. Do you forgive me? Barditchever said, what's the question? Of course I forgive you. He says, Rebbe, don't you think that deserves a l'chaim? He says, absolutely. The man came with a bottle of alcohol called 96. 96 means 96% alcohol, 4% water. Don't try it at home. A cup of that can put you to sleep till after Tisha B'Av. He fills it up. He gives the Barditchever l'chaim, exploiting his naivete. Says, Rebbe, for this we have to say l'chaim. And the Barditchever drinks. He makes believe as though he drinks. Pours it in his kapot or wherever. Barditchever finishes. He says, Rebbe, an enemy like me making peace with you is not a small thing. A second l'chaim. Barditchever says, of course. Fills up a second cup, 96% alcohol. L'chaim, Rebbe, l'chaim, to peace, to goodness, to forgiveness. Again, Barditchever finishes it. He pours it out under his coat. Rebbe, the Gemara says 3 times is a chazaka. Betlosa zimna v'chazaka. Let's make it a sealed deal. 3rd cup. L'chaim, Barditchever drinks it. Rebbe, gut yomtiv, leaves the house. What is he planning for? The Barditchever in a few minutes will be out. Come Kol Nidre. They're going to look for the Rav, Kol Nidre, right? And where's he going to be? He'll be drunk somewhere under a couch or maybe on the way to shul. And he'll be able to say, look, this holy Barditchever is a drunken alcoholic. When? Yom Kippur. And they'll be able to get rid of him. He went home. The Barditchever was the Barditchever. He didn't know who the Barditchever was. This man is very excited. He's going to have a Freiliche Yom Kippur. Without Rabbi Yitzchak Barditchever, he comes to shul early to get his place. Kittel, talis, everything sits in his place. To his dismay, who walks into shul the exact appropriate time? Rabbi Yitzchak Barditchever goes to his place. They start Kol Nidre, like nothing happened. Finish Ma'ariv. In Barditchev, there was a minig. Many communities still have the minig, not everywhere, but in a lot of places. Yom Kippur after Ma'ariv, they stay in shul and say the whole Tehillim. The Barditchev had that minig, and Rabbi Yitzchak of Barditchev went over to be the chazan for Tehillim. So he's reading the kapitlach and finishing off every chapter loud. He comes to kapitel, chapter Mem Beis, chapter 42. Let me read. David HaMelech says, B'zois yadati ki chafatzta bi, ki lo yoria oivi aloi. How do I know, Hashem, that you like me? How do I know you like me? Ki lo yoria oivi eloi. You won't allow my enemies to triumph over me. That's how I know you like me. The Barditchever says this pasuk. And then he repeats it another 2 times. And then he translates it into Yiddish. Now I'm going to take a pause in the story. If I would finish the story now, what would you understand? The Barditchever was reading a verse 3 times loud. How do I know, Hashem, that you like me? You don't allow my enemy to triumph over me. Yoria oiviala, yoria from the word trua, he will not triumph, he will not win me, he will not defeat me. That's where you would think the story is going. That's not the story. The Barditchever now repeated the pasuk in Yiddish 3 times with an original translation. Yoria in Hebrew means 2 things. Yoria comes from the word trua, which means triumph, win. But Yoria also comes from the word ra, bad. I'm going to say what he said in Yiddish and I'll translate. Bezois yodati ki chafatzta bi. Mit dem will ich wissen, Ribono shel Olam, as du glust mir, as du hast mir lieb, ki lo yoria oivi eloi. Du wirst nicht tun schlechts zu mein Feind, zu lieb mir. Hashem, how do I know you love me? You will not harm my enemy because of what he tried to do to me. How do I know that you love me? Because you will not allow my enemy to suffer because of what he wanted to do to me. That's how I know you love me. If you really care about me, I ask you not to hurt my enemy, my oivi, Eloi, because of the cheshbon, because you want to protect me. He said this 3 times in Yiddish. This man had a heart of stone, but somewhere he had a heart. And this he couldn't deal with anymore. Such a person. He was so low. He was what he did was so despicable. It's not just he fought him. To get him drunk Erev Yom Kippur, to create this blood libel against him. And the Barditchever doesn't ask God, protect me. No! What is he asking Hashem? Don't hurt another Jew because of me. Don't hurt my enemy for my sake, if you really want me. He couldn't help himself. Even his neshama came out. He ran over to the stender and he said, Rebbe, Zayme Meichel. And he went down on his hands and knees right in front of the shul, in public. And he said, forgive me, I never knew who you were. I never knew who you were. Which I assume in parentheses, the Barditchever knew that all along. The Barditchever understood that sometimes people don't know who somebody else is. Sometimes they don't know who they are. Sometimes people are so trapped in their pettiness, in their narrow-mindedness, in their stupidity, in their own toxicity, in their own mishagasan. They never don't know who they are. How could they know who somebody else is? Especially a tzaddik, especially a person who's so pure, so goodness. If you never touched purity in yourself, how could you sense purity in somebody else? So you're like trapped in a prison. But Barditchever says, don't hurt him. That itself helped him come out. It helped him see something he never saw. So I never realized who you were. That's an illustration of the Rachayim. Ani Yosef achichem Hashem echartem oisim Mitzrayim. That's what calmed down the brothers. They realized Yosef is a different person. And of course they also realized how badly they misunderstood him. Now, one should say that every one of us sitting in this room should operate mamish on that level of consciousness. Is a very, very profound statement. But what we could operate is on this level of consciousness. Namely, I may have a heart that's experiencing a lot of negativity. And my thoughts are giving me so many negative messages. But is it possible for me to tell myself, these are my thoughts. This is my bodily, physical experience right now. I don't have to allow that flow of thoughts to dictate my behavior and to kidnap me and abduct me and make me a slave into that space. Now, this does not mean, by the way, I like to mention this as a disclaimer. This does not mean that when I see somebody hurting somebody else, I should make believe nothing happened in the name of love and righteousness. Because if somebody's being hurt, somebody's being hurt. And it has to be stopped. What it means is how I live my life. Don't spend your years not speaking to people, holding grudges against people, slandering people, feeling horrible, negative energy towards people. It's taking a beautiful life and living it in a very mediocre way. Kotzker Rebbe once said, I don't want my chassidim not to sin because they don't have a Yetzer Hara. I want them not to sin because they shouldn't have time to sin. You understand what he's saying? Where do you have time for it? There's so much good. There's so much beauty. There's so many great things to achieve. Where do I have time to walk around with toxicity? Who has time for it? If I have it, let it be. Don't worship it. Don't turn that into a divine deity. There's a voice in my heart or a voice in my head that says, I'm never going to talk to them again. I'm not going to say good Shabbos. I'm not going to invite them. I'm not going to, and that's it. Okay, it's a natural thought. My little animal got hurt. Fine. So I have a little puppy in me. It's called a Nefesh HaBahamis. So make to the puppy nice. Don't worry about it. But allow your larger soul to make the decisions. Don't allow your decisions in life to be made by a petty consideration that my little cute puppy inside of me, or my little elephant, or my little puppy, or my little chimpanzee, whatever animal you prefer to identify your Nefesh HaBahamis with, a little cat, a little goat, a little sheep, a little ox, depends how big the horns are. Every Nefesh HaBahamis is different. There's a shor, that's why there's many karbanas. There's an ox, there's a sheep, there's a bull, there's a goat, there's a cute little bird, there's a pigeon, there's a dove, right? And animals are very cute, but they don't always see the big picture. So yeah, my animal got very, very affected, and I understand that. But don't make decisions from that place. Don't cut off ties. Don't tell someone, I'm never speaking to you again. There shouldn't be people in life that we don't speak to. I know there are exceptions. I always have to say this. I know if things are dangerous and you need boundaries for protection, I know there are. But generally speaking, if you're a safe, mature, protected adult, there shouldn't be people that you don't speak to. It doesn't mean I have to be your best friend. Maybe not. But speak to everybody. What happened? Say good Shabbos. Reach out. You never die from giving love, from giving warmth, from being kind. You don't have to hold on old grudges and fights from Farda Milchama. There's people, they hold on stuff from before the Second World War. You know that? And it goes like for generations. Leave it alone. Let it go. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe he was right. Maybe he was 50% wrong. Maybe he was 90%. Maybe he was 1,000% wrong. But don't allow somebody else's wrongs to eat you up for the rest of your life. Don't allow your enemies to live in your brains rent-free. And as the old saying says, holding on to grudges and resentment is basically eating poison and hoping your enemy will die. You ever imagine that? The person eats poison, so my enemy will die. Or better, maybe, lighting yourself on fire, putting yourself on fire, hoping your enemy will die from inhaling the smoke. That's basically what we do. I'm living, I'm burning, I'm verhackt, I'm verbittet, I'm zerschmettert, but you're hopefully going to you're going to inhale the smoke and you'll perish. Don't do that to yourself, even from your own cheshbon. Certainly when you realize the arevim zebazeh. Love on means cleanse your heart. Somebody once said, to be happy in life, you have two choices. Listen to this. Either you have a clear conscience, or you get rid of your conscience. If you have a little bit of a conscience, you're going to be miserable. You have a choice. Either a clear conscience, or just kill it. But you can't kill your conscience, especially if you're Jewish, especially if you're a Jewish mother. You can't kill your conscience. You could try. That's what addiction is. All addiction is, I can't live with a clear conscience, so I have to run away from the pain. Love on means live with a clear conscience. I should say, I made a mistake, I fix it.
I hurt you, I'll apologize. The pain that we have, listen to this, the pain that we cause ourselves by avoiding situations that are uncomfortable is infinitely less than the pain that we have when we confront the situation. All situations that we don't want to confront and we avoid it causes endless more agony for a lifetime than the uncomfort of calling up and saying, I want to say I'm sorry. Love on, pure. And then we come to the last two, 8 and 9. V'chatzeros v'dizahav. And the Rechaim here is very straightforward. The Rechaim says, Chatzeros is Tilmud Torah b'kviyas ki Yaakov Avinu. Learn Torah permanently like Yaakov. Because Chatzeros, he says, is associated with the term Nichsefa v'gam kol sanafshi lechatzrois beis Hashem. Also Tehillim, Mem Beis, Mem Gimel. My soul yearns for the courtyards of God. Chatzeros. The courtyards. What does it say about Yaakov? Yoshev Oyholim. He dwelled in the tents. What are the Chatzeros? What are the courtyards where Hashem dwells? Batei Medrashos. Places of learning. Moshe Rabbeinu's 8th program is, don't stop immersing yourself in learning and growth. When I learn, my horizons are broadened. When I learn, my perspective expands. When I learn, I internalize in my mind God's wisdom. Chatzeros, he says, learning is not when you're a child. Learning is a lifelong condition. A great scholar in Judaism is not called a chacham. What is he called? A Talmid chacham. Always a student of a chacham. He's 90 years old. He learned his whole life. No, Talmid chacham. The moment you cease to be a student of chachma, my growth stopped. The real experience of Jewishness stopped. That's Chatzeros. That's program number 8. A lifelong learner. I once read a book by Rabbi Emanuel Feldman. He was the rabbi of Beth Jacob in Atlanta. And he wrote a book called Tales Out of the Shul. Very funny, humorous, a lot of anecdotes there. So he says there, an anecdote, he came to Atlanta in the beginning of the 50s. Today, Atlanta is a big community. His shul is a big shul. A lot of Moisdes HaTorah there. But in the 50s, it was mamish. From a Jewish perspective, it was a barren desert. Anyway, he got into the shul. And one night after Ma'ariv, he went to the library and he was learning. He was sitting and learning Gemara. He sees that the president of the shul, the president, walks by and is looking through the door, through the window into the library with tremendous bewilderment for a long time. And he doesn't understand why. At the next board meeting, the president got up and he said, I have something very serious to share with the board members and I don't know what to do about it. Our rabbi is really deceiving us. And this is very, very bad news and I hate to share it, but I want to tell you what happened. The other night, I walked by the library and I saw him learning. And he was so into it and he was immersed and I saw he was working hard trying to absorb the information. But he told us that he graduated 6 years ago. This is really bad news. And he was bringing out the attitude. You see the rabbi learning. What's there to learn? He graduated 6-7 years ago. So program number 8 is V'chatzeros. At last, program number 9, step number 9 in the program is V'dai Zahav. What's Dai Zahav? What's Dai Zahav? Dai Zahav means literally enough gold. What does it mean, enough gold? Says the Heilikei Rachayim. I quote, Sheyoimar lezahav dai. He should tell the gold enough, meaning, Shekol ma sheyeh lo yeh be'einav davar maspik ki'ilu yesh lo kol zahav. What you have, you should celebrate as though you have all the gold. Ezo asher hasameach bechelkoi. The Rechaim is saying, Moshe Rabbeinu's last message is, don't wait till tomorrow to start living. Tomorrow, when I get the house, when I get the gold, when I get the silver, when I get the mink coat, when I get the tennis bracelet, when I go on vacation, when I become richer, when I sell the business, when the kids leave me alone. Tomorrow. V'dai zahav means what I have today is enough. It's perfect. It doesn't mean I don't want more and I shouldn't grow and I shouldn't try to enhance my life. What it means is you can have a person who has so much and they're miserable. And you have a person who doesn't have so much, but they appreciate it. Sameach bechelkai. Learn to celebrate what you have. Learn to see the half full cup. Learn to see the bagel, not only the hole inside the bagel. Somebody asked once a question. What happens when you eat the bagel? Where does the hole disappear to? Good question, right? The hole is there. You eat the bagel, where does the hole go to? So I explained to him, the hole only exists because there's a bagel around the hole. The moment you take the bagel and you eat it, there's no hole. The hole only exists vis-a-vis the bagel. Vis-a-vis the bagel, you have to choose. I look at this or I look at that. When you really take it in, it's gone. It's always a perspective issue. This doesn't mean a person is not missing something and they should try to get it and achieve it. But it means to have an inner sense of contentment and celebration in life rather than this constant sense of, I need to be like you, I need to have your bar mitzvah, I need your kitchen, I need your counter, I need your private plane, I need your private jet. You want to work in getting a private plane? Gesundheit, and give me some lifts. But v'dai zav, wherever you are in life, say, I have enough gold as though I have all the gold in the world. Why? Because you're alive, you have God, you have yourself, you have your loved ones, v'dai zav. The Rechaim Moshe says, it teaches you, Moshe says, don't be a glutton. Sometimes people define their whole life by pursuing another superficial craving and pleasure. It's not really what you're looking for. It's not really what you need. Have the ability to be able to identify that which you really need for your growth and that which you're looking for simply because I'm not connected to my inner core. Those are the 9 steps in Moshe Rabbeinu's program. Number 1, Aver. Live a life of Avram, live a life of love. Hayardain. Choose inner persuasion, inner awareness, rather than outer coercion. Number 3, Bamidbar. Be raw, authentic, humble. Barava. But take responsibility, stand up to injustice, be a guarantor, and make sure your humility is sweet. It sweetens your life. Moil sof. Face your mortality. Hoidieni Hashem kitzi. Limnois yameinu kein hoida. Understand the value of a day and face your mortality. Look at it. Face it. Live a life consistent with it. Cherish a day. Cherish a moment. Cherish a relationship. Carpe diem. Seize the day in Latin. Seize the day. Moil suf also. Face your mortality in the sense that the idea that you're separate from God is just a perception created by a refrigerator who's unaware of its truth. Understand who you really are. You're divine. Don't surrender to anything else. Don't compromise that. That's Mol Suf. After Mol Suf, we get to number 6. Bein Paran uvein Teufel. Remain in the space between celebrating the beauty of life and appreciating the need for repair, for fixing, for healing, for growth. Number 7, love on. Cultivate a pure heart. Live a pure life, a clean life, a smooth life, a clean, clear conscience. That's number 7. Number 8, Chatzeros, live in the courtyards of God. Continue learning your whole life. And V'dai Zahav, whatever gold you have, you should be able to say, it's enough, it's beautiful. Sameach b'chelkai. Is it not perhaps possible to conclude and say, is it a coincidence that Parshas Dvarim is always read during the 9 days, the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av? that the 9 days correspond to the 9 midos, to the 9 characteristics that Moshe shares with his people. During the 9 days, one can cultivate each day one of these midos. And I can prove it because the first day is Aver, cultivating the midah of Avram Avinu, and it happens to be the yahrzeit of Aaron HaKohen. Aaron was Oyev Shalom, V'roidev Shalom. Avram was midas HaChesed. And so you go through the days, and each day represents one of these 9 midos, which fix and repair the difficult and challenging energy of the 9 days, all the way till the last one, the V'dai Zahav, which is on the 9th day. Is it maybe possible? I add with a possibility, in a possible suggestion, that Moshe Rabbeinu was giving here 9 midos, not just in the last weeks before his life, but especially read during this time of the year when we read Parshas Dvarim, so the 9 days could correspond to these 9 characteristics that one can cultivate, internalize, embrace in their life, and create a life full of oneness, full of depth, wholesomeness, meaning, and inspiration, until the great moment when the 9 days will be transformed to complete joy. B'mei Rabbi Ameinu, Amen. Thank you very much. Next Sunday, Tisha B'Av, there will be a lecture right here by yours truly, 2:30 p.m. Sunday, 2:30 for men and women. There will be a mechitza, men, women, and children. Everybody is invited. Next Tuesday, there is a shiur, Be'ezer Hashem Bli Neder. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Gott von Avraham. Gott von Avraham. Beautiful tefillah, Mitzvah Shabbos. Gott von Avraham.
Thank you for reconnecting me to the Rosh and his Lashon Mardus is
Toiva Mardus Achas. I think, let's see how he puts it. Literally it means rebelliousness. What I think it means is, the best translation I think is, one word of chastisement in your heart is more effective than 100 lashes.
because the idea is also descending.
Descending, Yered. Yered, Yerida.
In terms of going inside.
Going inside, yeah.
Also, the analogy with the roof, the neshama, the electricity. So when a roof doesn't rot, it doesn't, so what's going on? There still must be
Yeah.
some kind of electricity.
Kista de Chayusa, yeah. Sometimes there's unique bodies that don't rot because the Gashmi became a Keli for the Ruchni. The electricity and the physical became one. So the body doesn't have to rot. That's very unique though. Usually a body decomposes, goes back, becomes the nutrients for the earth, and there's new growth from it and so forth.
Where can I write to you?
Rabbi YY at theyeshiva.net.
You spoke to me today. That's
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
I'm just introducing myself. I'm Rabbi Friedman's daughter from Chicago.
Ah, Skokie.
Go over Skokie. So please
Gewaldig.
go over it.
So you're a Sirotskin and a Friedman.
And I have to thank you because of you, my father's spending 10 days in Muncie now at my house.
Wow, gewaldig. He was here this morning.
This morning he'll be here again.
Gewaldig. Okay. Your mother's also here?
She's in Israel. She's going today.
Mazel tov. Sh'b'rishat tova matzlachas a binyan adayat. Have a beautiful and blessed life. Larichis yamim v'shanim tovos. A lot of nachas.
Can you record for me? Can I record you with that nigga?
I did it in the class. I did it in the class.
But I didn't record you.
It'll be on the yeshiva.net.
But how do I get that on my own personal?
You could download it.
I can?
Yeah, yeah.
But that particular little...
Yeah, you'll ask somebody who knows they could cut it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
My son's a little bit
Or grandsons.
So, right, I want to introduce you Rami's wife. She's been listening to you since she's in Spain.
Wow.
And Abraham, my son, got married, remember?
Mazel tov.
To Estrella Tzatika.
Beautiful.
So she said, I always see and hear him from Spain on the phone in the morning, at night, here, there. So I said,
Valdik.
yeah, so this
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yes, yes, you should buy it.
A lot of Hatzlach in Spain.
No, they're here to say what you should.
No, okay. It should be with a lot of Hatzlacha. Thank you for coming.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Good to see you.
Ah.